Hey, everybody. As everybody's coming into this session, if you can hear me, it looks like I'm already getting some hellos. If you can hear me, tell me in the chat where you're located, maybe a city or a state or a country, just so we know where everybody's getting in from. And maybe you have somebody local to you that you didn't know about. Looking through these. Oregon, that's Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I was just there in September. Amazing. Where else? Laramie, Wyoming. Clearly, I'm calling out all these mountain states. I'll let you know where I'm from if you can't guess it yet. Ah, awesome. Houston, Charlotte, Michigan. Okay, awesome. I know we have just a short amount of time today, 30 minutes, so I'm going to get going right off the bat so we have lots of time. But welcome. I hope everybody's enjoying the start to Workflow Con so far. I'm so glad you're here. Um, we're going to talk about planning today. I'm so excited for this because this is a process, a framework I have used for 2 to 3 years now. I love it. It gives me structure, which I thrive on. It gives me focus. It gives me direction for where I want my business to go and my days to go. And it's just something that's given me so much peace. And honestly, it feels like freedom to have a plan and to not feel like I'm constantly scrambling. And so I'm so excited to talk about that today. I'm going to talk directly to solo firms. This is in the solo firm track. I'm a solo firm owner. I'm going to talk in that sense. This framework can be used no matter if you have a solo firm or a massive firm. This is a framework for planning. Anybody can use it. You can use it in your business. You can use it in your personal life. But today, because I'm a solo firm owner, love solo firm owners, I'm going to talk in that regard today. But know that you can just apply this to whatever situation you want. Okay, here's what we're doing today. I'm going to talk through my background, give you a little context, who I am, what I do, why I do it. We're going to talk through that planning framework, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A at the very end. But I like a little casualness to these things. So if you have Q&A during this, we're going to pause a few times to ask questions in the middle. So you don't have to save all your questions to the end, and we'll get them as we go through. So thanks so much for everybody being here. Okay, first and foremost, I'm Erica Goode. I'm a CPA. These are my people that you're seeing on the screen. This is actually our Christmas card. So you're seeing our Christmas card before our family. Don't tell anybody. This was our vacation to Rocky Mountain National Park this past summer. We have a camper. We haul our camper across crazy places and visit a lot of national parks. So these are my people who are close to me. My husband, Ben, who's also a CPA, and our two kiddos. But a little background on my career journey. I started off at KPMG Chicago. I was in the audit practice. I spent about 2 years there and left after I made senior. And I was actually pulled away by a former KPMG manager who brought me into Walgreens headquarters, also in Illinois, out in Deerfield, Illinois. And I spent the rest of my corporate career there. I hopped around to accounting roles and FP&A roles. I rose the corporate ladder quickly and furiously, and it was great. And it also sent me straight to burnout. I don't know if anybody's experienced burnout, but I went through a season of burnout in about 2012, and it really helped me reprioritize where I was going in my career and where I was going in my life. And it ultimately led me to leave corporate in 2016 on good terms, voluntarily. It was bittersweet because I loved the work I did, but it was just the season that we wanted to focus on family, and I wanted to be home with the kiddos. And it's really hard to do that with two full-time working parents. And so I went home to just be stay-at-home mom. And I put it in quotes because just a stay-at-home parent is a lot of work. But it was different, and it felt better than what I was doing before. I felt like I was always dragging my kids behind me to and from work and just always rushing. And it wasn't the life I wanted to live. It wasn't the life I wanted them to live. And so I made that bittersweet decision, and I was, quote, just stay-at-home mom for 2 years. And I'll tell you a little bit what happened in 2018, but we moved out of Chicago. We live in Idaho now. I would tell you the name of it. It's Soda Springs. It's in the middle of nowhere. I promise you've never heard of it. We are not in Boise. We're about 2.5 hours north of Salt Lake City. It is where they grow potatoes for real. Next time you go to McDonald's, I bet your potatoes came from nearby. So it sounds like I had some sort of existential crisis in my 30s, quit my job and moved to the middle of nowhere. I promise it wasn't that dramatic. It was just a pivot that Ben and I had wanted to do. We wanted to prioritize certain things in our life. And that's what we're going to talk about today, prioritizing things in our business and our life. So, a little bit about my firm. I started the firm accidentally in 2018. I'm a one employee firm. That is just me. I'm the only employee as the IRS would define me. And I have one contractor, a non-US bookkeeper. She is wonderful. She's been with me for almost 3 years now. She's on maternity leave right now, so I'm missing her. But I work 15 hours. She works no more than 10 hours a week. And we tag team this thing, and it works out really great. If you're wondering how much can a 15-hour, one and a half person, two people firm produce in revenue, I'll be somewhere in the low 200s this year from a revenue basis, and profit. Let's not get into the nitty gritty of how we define profit on business owners. I like to call this total owner benefit. It's a different discussion for a different day, but total owner benefit is about 180 for this type of firm. I am super transparent on what I've done in my business. There is a pop-up here for a free ebook. It's a 25-page ebook, and it tells you all about the behind the scenes of running a 15-hour-a-week firm and what a P&L looks like, what tech stack I'm using, all the things to produce what you're seeing here. Not the point of today's discussion, but if you want the context of what 15 hours can do, I would recommend grab that ebook. It will not even put you on an email list. I won't even steal your email address. You could just read the book and we can never talk again. It's totally fine. So that is there for you. I'll have that at the end as well. Okay, let's dive in. Okay, bye family. We're going to talk about planning. What I think really matters is what we get done each day. And I think sometimes we get to the end of our days and we're like, oh, I didn't get anything done. And that was always a struggle for me. But the moment I kind of turned to see what was it that I planned to do today, it really changed everything. And I think we have to take multiple steps back. If we want to feel accomplished in our day, we've got to feel accomplished in our week, in our month, in our quarter. And so this planning process, this framework really starts at a quarterly level. It's something I do every quarter. That quarterly planning then flows into monthly planning. That monthly planning flows into weekly planning. And that weekly planning is really where I get in the nitty gritty of what I'm going to get done every day. And the end result of that is that I feel really accomplished every single day and week, that I got done what I was hoping to get done because I had set a goal for myself, a reasonable goal that I could actually accomplish. And then I'm able to actually accomplish that and pat myself out on the back at the end of it. Because I think so much of business ownership and so much of what is talked about is kind of the commiseration of oh, there's so much work to do. Oh, I didn't get it all done. Oh, I feel so bad about myself. Like misery loves company. But what if you just plan yourself some reasonable goals for the week and you got it all done and you got to see you were 100% effective? That's what I'm trying to do here today. So let's dive into what quarterly looks like. So every month, at the end of every month, I put on my calendar, because if it's on my calendar, you'll see it happens. I put a 4-hour time block every last Tuesday of the month. For 4 hours, I step away from my office and I have time to work on my business, not in my business. And I'm sure I'm not the first person to tell you to do this, but it is something that I stay true to. Never do it in my office because my brain thinks a certain way when I'm in my office and I need to get out of that for a little bit. So I'll go to a coffee shop. I'll go into my living room. I'll sit in bed and do it just somewhere different where my brain will think differently. And every quarter, I start that meeting with these three questions. First, I start with what went well last quarter. Because, like I said, sometimes we can get in this defeatist mindset of like, oh, I didn't get anything done. When in reality, there's probably a lot we got done, and we don't take the time to look back and see how much we've accomplished. And they don't have to be like big things. You don't have to have like come up with a new IFRS rule. Like you don't have to do anything crazy. It's just acknowledging that you've done something. So last quarter, one of mine is that I made it through summer. Summer is hard for me because I get out of a schedule. My kids are home and I love being home with my kids, but it makes working hard because it's just a little more free and fun, and I like a little more structure and routine. And so one of my what went well was that I made it through summer. And so that was something I was happy for. Another one was that I switched providers on how I pay my contractors. That was another little thing that I had done. It didn't take forever. It was a small thing, but it was something that was important to me. And then, a software integration. I integrated a new software. So I go through all of these and I'm looking at my actual notes. I do this in paper because I'm generally not in my office and I like to do it by hand. But I start with that. I start with the positive. I start with something positive, and then I go to number two, which is what did I learn last quarter? So when I first started doing this question was what went bad last quarter? And I felt like that was a little negative. So I reframed it into what did I learn? Because even if things go bad, I always learn something from it. I won't do it the same way next time. I'll have a different format for it. So a few of mine were so a client let me go last quarter. And what I learned from that was that I can looking back at onboarding that client, I can gauge when it's going to be a good fit client. And I had like a feeling about that client. And in that client then disengaging with me, it was really easy to see like, oh, I should really trust my gut, or I should um I don't know. It just was a learning experience. So I didn't it's not an opportunity to be like down on myself. It's more of like, okay, so for next time, so for the future, what will that look like differently? Another thing that was what did I learn last quarter is I had to go to a funeral last quarter. My grandfather died. He was 101. Even when you know somebody is going to pass, you never know exactly what week they're going to pass. And so I had to really reframe my schedule and reschedule everything. And what I learned from that was that my clients are incredibly gracious and flexible. And I'm so grateful to have them because nobody said boo about rescheduling. And I think sometimes as solo firm owners, we get really nervous. And I hear a lot of people say this before they even launch their firm. What are like what's going to happen if something happens to me? I'm the firm. And oftentimes I just tell people like take on good clients, trust that they're going to be good to you, and go for it. And so that was mine. Okay, I know we are short on time, so let me keep diving. So the next question is what are my priorities for next quarter? And then I start brain dumping. I start like word vomiting onto my piece of paper with everything that I want to do next quarter. No holds barred. Like just start putting it all on paper. So this is what mine looked like last quarter. I needed to onboard a new client. I needed to follow up with a podcast guest. I need to make sure all my clients have their W-9s before January. My bookkeeper's going on maternity leave. I got to cover her. I need to have a discovery call. I'm going to jump to KTLO. I don't know if anybody else uses this term. This is an old corporate term that I used to use. Keep the lights on. Oftentimes it was used to cut expenses. Like we're not going to spend anything except keeping the lights on. What the bare minimum of what we have to do to run this business. So I use it in the same way of like, I'm not going to do anything extra between Thanksgiving and Christmas in the United States. I don't want to do anything other than serve my clients in scope and nothing extra because I would just have other things in my life that I want to focus on. Other things that came up there, planning, going to Connect next week, planning for this presentation. And inevitably, as I do this, personal things start coming out of my brains and I just write them down. I don't try to separate everything. I'm just like, just write it all down. I need to update Ben and I's long-term financial plan. Oh, I wanted the family to volunteer at the food bank. I got to sign up for that. I need to review all my clients' and then it goes back to business. Then I need to review all my clients' pricing. And I just start dumping and I look at everything on the page. And at that point, I start to get a little overwhelmed. And I think, okay, this is a lot, but there are buckets here. And so then I start to bucket things. For me, my buckets are client work, marketing, admin, and probably personal, because there's usually some personal stuff that flies out through here. And I just start bucketing them. Okay, this thing is a client thing. This thing is an admin thing. This thing is a personal thing. And so I can start see that, yeah, there might be 12 things here on this list, but there's 4 buckets here, and those all don't have to exist together. And when I start compartmentalizing it, it starts to become easier for my brain to start planning around. And maybe when you do this, your buckets aren't the same. Maybe it's not client marketing admin. Maybe there's no personal. Maybe you've got that. But maybe it's client automation admin, whatever's a priority for you, you might see that fall out in this process. Okay, I'm going to pause for Q&A really quick. Davita, who is our host, she's going to, let's see if we have any. Oh, I can see the Q&A. Great. Okay, I'm reading through these really quick. If there's anything. Oh, are you willing to share where your contractor is located? Yes, she's in the Philippines, though she is currently living in Qatar. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to keep diving through, keep putting your questions in there, and we'll revisit those towards the end. So what I do with all this, if this feels overwhelming, it kind of started doing this compartmentalization. Now I have what I call the 12 box. And if you have 3 or 4, if I have 4 buckets of things, client, marketing, admin, personal. So those are my column heads, and each quarter goes along the side. So it comes up with 12 boxes. If you have less categories, maybe this is a 9 box for you. If you have more, maybe this is a 15. For as long as I've done this, I always just happen to have 12, maybe sometimes 9. When I started adding in personal, that became my extra 3. So I start with this format. Again, I'm doing this on paper. You can do this however you want. If you want to put this in Excel, if you want to put this on paper, if you want to put this in your workflow software, this can exist anywhere. How you do it is not important as just going through the process and doing it. So then I start to bucket. I have all these buckets and I start to put these things based on when I know these things need to happen. And so I know that I need to onboard that client in October, and I start filling, I know that my contractor is going to be on maternity leave all through Q4. And I know I want to follow up with that discovery call in October. I don't want to wait on that. And that's something really important to me. And then I told you I didn't want to do anything extra Thanksgiving to the holidays. And so I'll actually put that in there as a visual reminder to me that Erica, you're committed to not doing anything during this time other than in scope serving your clients. And so for me, when I continue to go back this at my monthly planning, it will remind me that, hey, did somebody ask you to be a guest on a podcast? You should say no because you committed to doing nothing. Did somebody want to have an extra meeting with you, maybe a strategy session? I would love to, but I can't. I'm at capacity right now. And I will start saying no to things because end of September, Erica, committed to not doing anything during that time. And I want to honor what that priority was at that time. So I'll start bucketing all of these. And this becomes my playbook then for the next quarter. As I go through every month, and again, I do that, I call it a think session. I do that 4-hour think session at the end of every month. I'm going back to here and saying, for October, I have to do all these things. Let's make sure I keep my calendar open so I can fit all of this stuff in. And as every week goes on, I'm going in and getting those things done, and I'm scratching it off this list to tell myself, yep, you did it. And so it goes into a monthly process that I might put this on my calendar so I block time for it. I might not, but I know that it's there. And every month I can go back and remind myself what were my priorities, because I don't know about you, I have some shiny object syndrome. And if somebody's like, hey, did you try out that new AI bot? I'm like, ooh, where is that? How much does it cost? Let me play with it for 3 hours. And then I've lost 3 hours. But if I have these things on my calendar, I don't have time to get shiny object syndrome. Okay, so for me, at the end of every week, for me, that is Thursday at 2:30 because my week ends on Thursday at 3 p.m. when I go pick up my kids from school. I will take this here and I'm a time blocker. This is my calendar for this week. This is what it looked like last week before I even did this. But on Thursday at 2:30, I'm sitting down and penciling everything into my calendar. And I know there are some people who despise time blocking. There are some people whose their brains will break over time blocking. I don't think this is the only way you can do it. This is how I do it. This is what works for my brain. When I show up on Monday morning, I have I have a roadmap to the day. Every day I show up that week, I know exactly what I have to do because Thursday Erica has told me all the priorities that need to happen every day so that I can make sure all of these priorities happen. And so as I'm sitting down on Thursday, I'm literally plugging in things. It always starts with my client needs, whatever my client needs, that comes first. And I will put those all in. And then I will go into that priority list and I'll start plugging in things where I have time to do those items. So, whatever might be here, right? If my annual pricing review is going to take me an hour in October, then I'm going to go sure and make sure I plug in somewhere an hour when I can to get that done. And then what this frees me up to do is when somebody comes in and says, "Hey, do you want to have a networking call? Do you want to have a virtual coffee?" Which are great next week. I can look at this and say, "Ooh, I actually don't have a half hour to spare." Because the worst thing that can happen is you fill up with you fill up your time with things that aren't moving your business forward. Not that networking calls aren't wonderful and they don't have value to them, but you've said what your priorities are at the beginning of the quarter, and maybe they are keeping X hours open for networking calls, and maybe you block that on your calendar, but maybe they're not. And this keeps you honest to what those priorities were at the beginning of the quarter. So this is my real calendar for this week. You will see personal stuff is in green here. The Scholastic Book Fair is happening tomorrow. So I will just have things because this has become my playbook for the week. Everything happening here is something I need to focus on. I know it aligns with my priorities. And I also know about myself, if it lands on my calendar, it will happen. I will forget about it if it is not somewhere that I'm staring at every hour. So yes, you will see laundry on here. Yes, you will see roll down the trash can on Monday at lunch because I will forget that and the trash will sit there for 3 weeks. But I plug in all of my work stuff. You don't see anything on Wednesday. I don't work Wednesday. I don't work Friday. That's why that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday is my are my like go-to work days, and I'll start plugging things in there. Um, yeah. So again, time blocking is the way I do it. I think if you are not a time blocker, if time blocking gives you hives, I get it. There are people that this just does not resonate with. I don't think that means that you can't go through that quarterly framework and that 12 box process. I think maybe for somebody who doesn't time block, that might look like, okay, next week I want to do these 3 priorities. And maybe you have that as a list somewhere. And maybe that gives you freedom that your calendar doesn't look blocked. Maybe then if you're not a time blocker, you feel like you have the freedom to do those things because you have so much time on your calendar. It's really tricking whatever tricks your brain into getting those priorities done, whether it be time blocking or keeping your calendar wide open. You know your brain better than anybody else. It's kind of finding what works for it to get those things accomplished. But you've gone through the process on a quarterly, monthly, weekly basis to know what those priorities are for you to move your business forward. Okay, that is all I have. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. I'm going to take a drink of water first, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A, and we'll start running through these. Um, so start sending those in, and we'll start reading through them. Ooh, I'm just saying, how many clients do you support? What services are you providing? I do bookkeeping to fractional CFO work. I do not do tax preparation, and I serve 10 clients. What calendar do you use? I use a Google Calendar. That's my Google Workspace calendar. I also use Calendly if for scheduling for like client and like new client scheduling. How far in advance of a quarter do you schedule this planning session in general? That's a good question, Danielle. So every month I have a standing 4 hours on my calendar. So the last Tuesday, the last 4 hours of the afternoon are always on my calendar to do that planning session. So it's always there. But maybe your question is like, how soon am I doing that quarterly planning? For October, November, December, I would have done that planning the last Tuesday of September, whenever that was. So it's really just a week ahead. Debbie has a question. Does your 15 hours per week include all your time working on your business and in your business, or is it just your billable time? Good question. It is all of my time. It is client work. It's like what you would call billable work. It's also marketing, admin. Um, that's kind of the three buckets that I think of. So there's everything is included in that 15 hours. Do I still only have one contractor? Lena asks. Yes, I still only have one contractor, except for right now because she's on maternity leave. So I technically have zero contractors. Okay, let me scroll here. Can I share exactly what fractional CFO services are? I'm sure it varies to client to client. How do you know you could provide those services for the first time? Good question. That's from Alex. Oh, Alex, I think you're on my email list. So, fractional CFO services, in my view, they're a lot more advisory. You might hear CAS, advisory, fractional CFO, VCFO, virtual CFO, and that's for me and my business. That is forward looking. It's always forecasting, cash flow planning, and for me, that is what my background. And when I was at Walgreens, it was FP&A, financial planning and analysis, and I was constantly forecasting and budgeting. Those were my roles mostly at Walgreens. And so my background is heavy in forecasting, and that's now what I provide to my clients. So I'm doing QuickBooks. I operate in QuickBooks. My business is all on there. And I'm doing the bookkeeping in the past. But then when I meet with my clients on a monthly basis, I'm telling them about the past briefly. And then we're more so talking about the future. And that is more where we go with that. Just because my background is in that, I felt comfortable doing that. I will be honest, I did not realize that my clients needed that. I kind of went into firm ownership with the idea that, like, well, small businesses are small businesses. I guess I'll just do their bookkeeping. That's all they need. And I was very narrow minded just because I was so clueless to the industry of firm ownership, honestly. And it wasn't until my first and only client, uh, when we hit the pandemic, I had been doing her QuickBooks and I could see that she was going to run out of cash. She was a brick and mortar. The state she was in had shut down quickly and furiously in person activities. And I could see very quickly she was going to run out of cash. It was April and she was going to run out of cash by October, and she was going to not have a business, and she couldn't see it. She had these beautiful, like, I don't know if anybody else has clients that are just beautifully optimistic. That's all she could see. And I was like, no, I have to show this to you. And so that's really when I turned the corner of starting to do forecasting for small businesses. Okay. It is 11:29. I know we're going to get swept out of here in a minute. I appreciate you all being here. I hope you have a wonderful workflow con. I hope you have a wonderful fall. Happy holidays when those come around. I just appreciate you all being here. If you want to read the 15-hour accountant, it will not take you 15 hours to read. It is a 15-minute read. It's free. I won't steal your email address, I promise. But there is a newsletter that you can hop on. If you like that book, I send out an email every Wednesday to a whole bunch of accountants who are just like me. And I'm so happy to have that group of people that I get to hang out with. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you all being here.